So, with there being so much propaganda being circulated in Western media in general, and especially in U.S. national media, and you basically only get one side of the story of pretty much any issue, I would like to play for you a clip of Singaporean diplomat and scholar Kishore Mahbubani. He's speaking about the main reason for the Ukraine war. I want you to check this out. Look at what he has to say. Check out his reasoning. And the reason I want to show you this is because it's a different side of the story and it's a different perspective, that of which is very different from what our Western leaders have to offer.
If you had asked me whether the next big war would happen close to Europe, I said, no, 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 no. The Europeans are so advanced. They're so sophisticated. You've had zero wars among major European states, yet zero prospect of war between any two EU states. And so I thought that would be the region that could prevent wars. But as you can see, the big war didn't happen in Asia. The big war happened right at the doorstep of Europe. And you can, of course, you can have a long discussion of what triggered the war in Ukraine. But if you ask me to give a single factor explanation, I would say it's the absence of the culture of pragmatism in European cultures. Because all they had to do was reach a compromise with Russia. And that would have prevented that war. And that culture of compromise, which is part of pragmatism, is missing. And for whatever reason, we have it here. It's invisible. You can't see it. But it is the results you see are the lack of wars, the lack of fighting, and an ability to cooperate despite these tremendous differences. And I can tell you the differences among Southeast Asians are much deeper and much greater than the differences among Europeans, who still at the end of the day belong to a singular civilization, one religion, one culture, one Greco-Roman roots. We don't have that. We have a complete diversity. But somehow, maybe because of the diversity, we created this culture of pragmatism. We learned the art of live and let live, and that's why we are at peace.
Wow. That was pretty neat. I really appreciate what he had to say there. And I kind of want to discuss it a little bit and provide my own opinion from my own perspective, of course. But firstly, to devolve or divulge into what he had to say there, he was asked to give I assume, a single reason for the war in Ukraine. And as he accurately pointed out, you can basically have a very long discussion about how this entire situation or conflict was brought upon. But sticking with the question at hand, or at least in his mind, a reason for why this entire thing occurred, he says that it is the absence of the culture of pragmatism in Europe, and their failure to reach, or that caused, that lack of the culture of pragmatism caused the failure to reach a compromise. And when you think back to before the invasion, before the war kicked off, there were talks. The talks were completely unserious, though, about what to do regarding the very real grievances that each side had. And nothing was done to address, probably most importantly, I would say, the grievances of Russia and Mr. Putin. They were considered non-starters, of course, by the U.S., and the Europeans scurried right on along in following or in lockstep with U.S. policy, as they still are today. And as he points out, that lack of a pragmatism, well, they can't have any sort of a pragmatism or any sort of a touch with reality if they're running in lockstep with U.S. policy, because U.S. policy essentially lacks the exact same thing. It's always this situation of winners and losers, or the good side and the bad side. It's this holy conflict between the angels and the devils. To put it into a metaphor, it's Vladimir Putin in Russia and China and Iran and that side of the world and all of their allies. They're the evil people, and the people on the West, the Germany, the France, the Canada, the United States, and all of their allies, all the NATO allies. These are the righteous freedom fighters, democracy upholders of life. These are the people that are going to come in and save the world from the tyranny that the others have to offer, right? BRICS and all those people. I mean, it's completely outrageous and insane, but this is the ideology that these people have adopted. And in our national media, all we get is the side of the story of, the freedom fighters of NATO and of the West, and how we need to liberate Ukraine and continue to send billions and billions of dollars of weapons and all the rest of it going into there, of course, to give to the neo-Nazis and to continue the bloodshed, while the reach of a compromise have essentially left any and all mainstream conversation. I mean, U.S. leaders are flat out saying, and they have been for some time now, that they would like to win. They want to win. While they say they want to win, while also acknowledging behind closed doors that winning isn't possible. I mean, if you go through and read the reports, it's quite outstanding stuff. And if you also know, this was firstly reported by the New York Times, that the CIA is on the ground in Ukraine, and they've been there for quite some time secretly, and also special operatives from, I believe, 20 other countries, 20 other allied NATO countries. I mean, this is a proxy war to the high heavens, but the theatrically that they have to put on display is that this is a war between good and evil, and the good guys must win in the end. And just to wrap up what he had to say there, he said they do have that culture of pragmatism in Asia, and there are many more differences across the people of Asia than there are in regards to the people of Europe. And there's much more diversity in Asia than there is in Europe. And he says that that's probably the reason why that culture of pragmatism exists. Now, I'll leave that up to your own interpretation and, what you would like to take from that and decide the correct answer is. But I do believe that, getting different perspectives on such important issues like this, especially when they threaten us with the extermination of the species, which is world war, I do believe it's incredibly important to really take in and experience different perspectives and different things that people have to say. Relatively recently, I saw that at the G7 meeting, they had unveiled this $600 billion plan to combat China's Belt and Road Initiative. Now, China's Belt and Road Initiative is something that is backed by trillions of dollars. I don't know what this $600 billion is going to do, but they want to combat it. And the reason they want to combat it is because it is successful. Okay, it is working for them, and it is something that's going well for them. And their policy doesn't line up with Western policy, specifically with American policy. And they're on their own, and they want to do their own thing, and that isn't allowed because they will not adopt neoliberalism. You have to adopt neoliberalism and practice austerity, or else the U.S. and their allies will consider you an enemy, and they will do things like come up with the measly $600 billion that they could be giving to their own population and helping them and pulling them up out of poverty. No, we're going to use that to fight against what we use substitute words for, such as autocracy, because we don't want to say the scary word that is socialism. I mean, it's really incredible stuff. You have a great power on the rise like China that isn't helping people out by expunging them into debt, by financializing their economies, privatizing very important resources of their economy, but they're doing it through a different way. And that is what is looked at as bad and as evil by the people that don't want to see that. And the war in Ukraine, in a sense, is essentially a cover-up. in order to, enact these theatrics and grandstand. But in the grand scheme of things, what they want to do is stop the rise of this Russia China linked power that's kind of spurring in that Eurasian landmass. They want to stop any and every competitor that wants to go their own way and doesn't want to move in lockstep with U.S. policy. I know I kind of went off on a tangent here and started talking about something a little bit different, but it all kind of ties in. But once again, that was Mr. Kishore Mahbubani, basically giving his reasoning for why he believes the Ukraine war was started. And I do believe it's important, as I stated before, to really look at perspectives that are different from the ones that you are continuously getting bombarded with.